bridge that is like a bridge, and it has the driving part down below that lifts up and down to allow these giant tanker ships to go underneath. And when you get stuck in your car because the bridge goes up, it's called being bridged.
Fun. You actually get stuck on the bridge going up?
You don't get stuck on the bridge. They close things down first.
I was like, that would be terrible. I was like, I know we got stuck a couple times waiting in line to do the bridge. And of course, when we first started going by this, so I was like, oh, it's right. Oh, crap. We have to go across this bridge and come back.
How do we get there?
But it's okay. We figured it out. So we came back twice. So that was good. So I guess I'll let you take over and tell a little about your background, Emily, and all that fun stuff. And then we'll start drinking because there's a lot of amazing. This is like one of our favorite craft distilleries in the entire country. We've been to many of them at this point in time, and had to have Emily on because this stuff is awesome, and I'm really, really excited about it. So I'll let her take it away and go from there.
Yeah. So the basic story of our distillery, we've been around for 9 years now. So my husband and I founded it together back in 2013. And the idea really came from Lake Superior and the magnitude of that amazing water source and how clean and clear and mineral free it is. And we actually, neither my husband nor I had a background in distilling at all. We were living in Boston at the time, but I grew up in Duluth. So was familiar with it. It was home. I loved it. The lake is always this like amazing natural and spiritual presence for me. But moved away to Boston to do public health stuff like you do. Did a PhD in food policy and applied nutrition, actually at Tufts University, and was working there. And my husband was working in Boston in global health. But we were both feeling kind of ready to move back away from the East Coast, looking for something to do that wasn't all PowerPoints. And so we had these like searcher feelers out, and we happened to be visiting my parents back in Duluth a January evening. So it was like minus 25 out, 3 feet of snow, perfect Duluth, gorgeous, everything we love. And they had just been at a spirits tasting. And we're like, tell us what you do at a spirits tasting. Tell us what you learned. And they're like, did you know we learned it's so crazy, but all you really need to make spirits is kind of like beer. All you really need is good grain and good water. And we were like, well, Minnesota has good grain. Duluth has the best water in the world. Somebody should start a distillery here. And it was like, as soon as we had said that, we were like, maybe we should. How bad of an idea could it be? And so we went back to Boston. And we were like, I don't know. This is kind of it's beach weather. It's kind of like, this is kind of a cool idea. And like literally the next week, we happened to meet a guy who had just started a craft rum distillery in Ipswich, Massachusetts, which is like 40-minute drive north. And so we started driving up to Ipswich on weekends to learn about the equipment, about the process, and a little bit about the burgeoning field of craft distilling. Because back then, it was 11 years ago at that point, 11 years ago, it was still a pretty new thing. And so we were going up to Ipswich and working on these stills, and we were like, well, this is basic biochemistry. We did this in undergrad. It's just like a lot bigger. We got this. And so, without really knowing anything about like the legalities, the legislations, the state by state differences, all of that seemed like the TTV, all of that fun stuff. We were like, we are going to go start a craft distillery in Minnesota. And so about 6 months after we had the idea, we packed up all of our stuff from our apartment in Boston and our little dog named Squid and drove halfway across the country to Duluth to start building out a distillery. We learned some at Ipswich. We worked a little bit also at a distillery on Bainbridge Island to learn a little bit more. We may or may not have had a home still. Who's to say?
Who would know?
That happened. I don't remember it. But,
I don't recall such a thing, but it's not to say that it didn't happen.
Yeah, there's some say, but I neither corroborate nor deny. But so 6 months later we moved to Duluth and we found a space in this old building that was like being used for storage. It was filled with like broken espresso machines and taxidermied grizzly bears.
Wonderful.
It was super awesome. And we like took out a bunch of walls, and we raised some money and got some equipment loans and all these things, and started building out a distillery. And like it, with that bravado of not knowing what you don't know, we were all like, we know how to do this. We know how to distill. We know how to run a business. We know how to get a distributor. And I think we just had like so much bravado that we did.
It's perfect.
But again, this was like 9 years ago when we started distilling. And so craft distilling was really new. It was absolutely brand new in Minnesota. There was only one other distillery that started before us. We started at the same time as a couple others. So we were really new on the scene in Minnesota. And we were lucky enough that some of the distributors around here were really interested in the craft distilling scene because they had seen what had happened with craft beer. And so even as we came along with our little like, we don't have any products to actually let you taste, but here's our concept and what we're planning to do. Awesome. And it's totally going to work. They agreed to take us on in their portfolio as soon as we had a product.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so we we started, our distillery was built out by September 2013. It was when we got our federal permit to distill and our state license. And then we spent that fall doing test batches. We launched with gin. So I think that's the first thing that we're going to taste. And that was really...
I'll just say, let's go ahead and throw some things in our glass real quick.
Yeah.
While we're doing so, Sam wants to know if you can show us the Dogo. I don't know if it's possible or not, but, we hear him yapping. And, if it is possible, Sam wants to see. As do I. Oh, there he is.
There's Word. Are you napping, sweetie?
Little nappers.
Who's here? Hi.
Hello, camera. All right. There you go, Sam. And Matt, which one of these is a gin? Is it completely clear?
The one that says gin on it.
A little bit.
The one that says gin on it. It's the one that would be completely clear. I think.
Okay,
well,
just so that you can understand what I'm going through here. Which one? Which one says gin on it?
The one on your left.
That's not English.
Which one is it? Which one? It's obviously the one that says gin, right?
Says it's got the V and it's got a B on it. And it's got a gin. The 45.
The B.
That one right there. The one you touch with your finger. That's the gin.
All right.
Anyway, so we spent about 4 months developing our test batches of gin, and like giving them to our family and being like, "Does this taste like gin? Does this taste like gin?" And it was. But I did and I was reading on distilling forums, and I was reading books
Matt, show me again,
and things like that to come up with these botanical blends. And it was on Thanksgiving of that year, 2013, that we made our first batch where it was like, this is gin. Yeehaw, we're gonna do this.
Perfect.
And we started refining from there. But we wanted to launch with gin because of this inspiration of the lake and the place in the North Woods and the natural ingredients we have. And northern Minnesota, where we are far north, not that far from Canada, is all boreal forests, right? It's all of these spruce and cedar and pine woods. And everybody's like, what does gin taste like? It tastes like pine. Ew. But pine is wonderful. And so we wanted to start with gin, and we started with not just one gin, but we actually started with 3 gins right off the bat. Ooh. Because we are also really driven by creative expressions of flavor and making things that are different, that can be used like a traditional spirit, right? And has that backbone of tradition, but that really bring their own creative culinary flair because of my food background.
I want to get into this style here in just a second. Matt, go ahead and ring the bell.
When people give us super chats, we make noise with this sword and shield. So thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
And then this to me smells much more like a London dry style of gin. Is that what y'all are kind of going for with this one that we're tasting?
Yeah, so this is our one that would be like our most gin lovers piney gin, right? So we have 3, and each takes the style of the gin in a different way with the juniper berries, but then other both traditional and foraged botanicals that we pick locally. So this one is our spruce gin. So in addition to traditional botanicals, it also has spruce tips infused into it. And the spruce tips are these little bright green chartreuse little buds that bud out at the end of the spruce branches every spring. And we go pick them. And we picked them off of spruce trees at this organic farm because our products are certified organic. So we had to find organic spruce trees after we got that certification. So luckily we have friends who have an organic farm where we get a lot of our botanicals and also get to do our foraging. So we not only we pick organic spruce tips, organic lavender, sage, rosemary. So it really takes these like local herbs to push that piney profile with, other piney types of flavors that are more botanical or more herbal and more floral. And then it balances it out with a lot of citrus. So it's very London dry on the nose, but when you sip it, it actually has more fruit and almost like a light sweetness that comes from the spruce tips. And so this one pairs really well with like lemon or lime and something like a French 75 or a gimlet or a bee's knees. It's really good in a bee's knees because that lavender, that sage goes really well with the honey in addition to the lemon. Yes. So we use different local botanicals and all of them to just kind of like capture those like scents and sounds of the woods around here. Then our other gins, we have one we call juniper gin, also creatively, but it has traditional gin botanicals and then also local rhubarb that we grow, which really pushes up those citrusy flavors. So it's strong juniper on the nose again, and more strong juniper flavor actually than the spruce gin, but it's bolstered by this fruitiness of rhubarb, which I use in a lot of our products, in a lot of our cocktails in our cocktail room as well, because it's kind of like local northern citrus almost. It's got that tartness, it's got that fruitiness. It's got this awesome complexity that really elevates other ingredients. And the juniper gin then also has some very non-local pink peppercorn to add a little spiciness at the finish, because it just, I used to always make this rhubarb compote that had a little bit of ginger and pink peppercorn in it. And I was like, if it works in compote, why couldn't it work in gin? Yeah. And it does. Really good in a cocktail. And then our third gin, I probably should have sent you this too, but you tried it when you were at the distillery.
Everything was awesome.
Our third gin is our cedar gin, which is our least traditional gin. So very much New American style, where you have the juniper berries in there, but they are a much more like fruity and subtle flavor because of the way we distill them. And we bring out that fruity berry side of the juniper also with locally grown black currant berries that add this kind of earthiness, toastiness, almost with a little bit of jam, cardamom, ginger, grapefruit peel, and locally for staghorn sumac, which again is almost like a local citrus. You can also use sumac for like making a lemonade type drink. And then we finish it with like cedar plank infusion, kind of like a cedar plank salmon.
What is
so that one's like more earthy and spicy.
Patty's asking a question that leads me to one. What is your base spirit that you're doing with the gin, or what are you distilling?
Great question. So the gin is distilled from organic Minnesota corn.
Okay.
So it's distilled from corn, as is our Aquavit, which gives it a very clean, neutral base to begin with, because we're really trying to highlight the botanicals. And so when you're making something like a gin or a vodka or an Aquavit, a lot of the unaged spirits, you want a very neutral base to highlight the other things that you're bringing out with botanicals. So that is different from whiskey, where with whiskey, you are distilling it less, and you're distilling it less cleanly and making wider cuts. So you're still cutting out the heads, cutting out the tails, and keeping the hearts. But with whiskey, you're taking a wider swath kind of for hearts, and you're getting some of those lighter alcohols, and you're getting some of those heavier alcohols, because those are going to interact with each other in the barrel to make esters and make complex flavors. If you leave those in and put them in your gin, they're just going to like wash out any botanical flavors and smell bad. Oh. They're going to smell bad, in my opinion. I mean, some people really like that more like malty, white doggy type of smell, but and you get that a little bit in like a Genever, where it's more malty because it's a less clean base. Less dry base. That's where London dry style comes from. It was using the cleaner base versus a maltier base.
I'm not surprised you said corn. My guess would have actually been maybe even a rum base or a sugar base, because you get a really wonderful sweetness. It's not overly sweet, but there's a wonderful sweetness that kind of plays in par with that juniper. That's just it's a lovely little gin.
Yeah, and all of our spirits have a very distinct sweetness that is actually from that Lake Superior water. And we forget what a huge role water can play, except for when you have like bad water and you have to use reverse osmosis or different things to get the off flavors out. But good water that has like its own kind of body or texture or flavor really can make a big difference in the flavor of the final product. And there was actually, I read a study once that I can't remember now which distilleries it was, but it was one of the Scottish distilleries and one of the Japanese distilleries sent each other their bases and then proofed at each other's places with their water. And so suddenly the Japanese whiskey that was proofed in Scotland with Scottish water tasted like the Scottish whiskey. And the Scottish whiskey that was proofed in Japan with the Japanese water tasted like Japanese whiskey.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Very cool. It does, it tells you like the big difference that water actually makes a difference in your whiskey. Because, like you said, if the water source is good, you get good stuff. Everything is fantastic. Can't go wrong. I know this is my wife's favorite too. That the spruce one, but it's so unique, and no one else that I'm aware of who makes anything remotely like this gin. So the 3 gins really made her day, to say the least.
We love to make people's day, and we love to make people who think they don't like gin.
Oh yeah, totally.
Gin lovers, because we're like, you just don't like bad gin.
That's what made us love gin. Is craft is like, gin can actually be really good and not disgusting $10 stuff that your grandma drinks that no one wants.
Yeah, it can be really smooth. It can be really balanced. Because we're super passionate about botanicals. I am like half witch. I think I love my botanicals. I love the medicinal history of botanicals and things like that. And so we also treat each botanical differently. We don't distill them all separately. Some distilleries do that. I think that it makes the flavors not meld together as well. So I personally like doing a single distillation with the botanicals, but we put some in the pot ahead of time that we steep for a certain amount of time. We put some in the pot right before we start distilling. Some are chopped, some are not. And then we also put some in a vapor basket that are vapor infused. And it's different for each of the gins as well. And so each of them has a different set of botanicals treated in a different way, distilled at different temperatures to bring out different flavors.
Andy, I was going to comment, buddy. Location. Oklahoma lakes are not the same.
No one wants that.
Nobody needs that. Nobody wants that in their life. That was
to say the least.
No shade, but
Yeah. Can you talk about your still real quick too? Just because I know you guys have a really great still that you guys have made up there. So
what am I pouring next, Matt?
The Aquavit after this.
Pour the Aquavit. Well, we talk about the still. So we actually have 2
the clear, the other clear one.
That's the other clear one.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So we have 6,000-gallon fermenters, and then we have 2 stills, a big 1,000-gallon kind of pot / hybrid still, and then a 250-gallon column still.
Yes, the Voyageur Aquavit's the one next.
Voyageur Aquavit.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And so, excuse me, I might need to go find some water. Both of our stills are from Vendome, which is the great historic still maker in Kentucky. And the big one we had specially made for us, and so that one is more like a big moonshine. It's mainly pot. It's just got a little bit of column with a few reflux plates on it, just a short column at the top. And we use that one solely for making whiskey and for stripping runs, which is where you take your fermented grain and then you're really just doing like a quick hot distillation to get as much water out as possible and as much alcohol separated from the water as possible, but you're not like trying to get just to the ethanol yet. So that's a stripping run. Then for all of the finer distillations, we transfer it over to our spirit still, which is also where we do our infusions. And so that one's 250 gallons and it has a long column with a lot of reflux plates on them. And reflux plates, of course, are reflux plates are little perforated plates that create barriers to the vapor that's traveling up when you're distilling, and it helps you separate compounds from each other better. And that one is also attached to a vodka column, which is even longer and goes up and up and creates a lot of opportunity for.
Yeah, I love your your poster you have there is the best poster ever that has all your breakdown, all the different places, the proofing on something. I've never seen that anywhere else. I have a picture. It's fantastic. I'll post it in our stuff later.
There you go. Yeah, we have a little
really, really cool.
little handy thermometer chart that shows you where the different boiling temperatures of the different compounds that you get after fermenting grain, and then where we make cuts for whiskey, for vodka, for different things.
Nice.
It's very cool. All right. Can you explain what Aquavit is? Because people probably don't have no idea what Aquavit even remotely is.
Yes. So Aquavit, which is Latin for water of life, aquavitae, so same meaning as whiskey technically, or eau de vie, is a traditional Scandinavian spirit. And so not only did I grow up in northern Minnesota, but I'm also a Norwegian-American dual citizen. My mom's from Norway, and we grew up spending summers in Norway. So Aquavit is the national spirit of Norway. You have it at holidays, you have it at Christmas, you have it at 17. Mai, which is Norway's Independence Day. You have it at midsummer, and it's a traditional caraway or dill infused spirit. You can have caraway or dill or both. We use caraway. That one's my preference. I think it makes for a better cocktail spirit. And so it was traditionally used as like a digestif. So you sip it straight to cut the fat in heavy meals. But it's also a really great cocktail spirit if you have a nice, smooth, balanced Aquavit. And so there are all sorts of different styles of Aquavit in Scandinavia's. But for many, many, many years, the only Aquavit available in the United States were Linja, which is imported from a single one imported from Norway, or Aalborg, which is imported from Denmark. And they're both very potent. And I would say 99.2% of people find them off-putting.
They scared me. That's the ones I've had prior. I was like, oh my gosh. Then I tried. I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. The other not
right.
good.
So, but like, kind of like gin doesn't have to be a cheap, like floor varnish gin. Aquavit does not have to be like, I'm going to punch you in the face with caraway repeatedly while yelling Viking things. Like, it can be gentle, it can be suave. I
kind of want that though. Like this smells good.
That has its place.
Kind of sounds delicious.
Yeah, and like it totally has its place. It can be great. But I also, I'm Minnesota nice. So we also wanted to make like a more approachable, softer sipper Aquavit. So we make 2 Aquavits, 3 gins, 2 Aquavits. Our Aquavits both use the same botanical blend, which include caraway and cardamom and ginger and cinnamon and orange peel, lemon peel, fennel, a lot of like Scandinavian baking spices. And so it's this balance of kind of sweet, savory, citrusy. And then the one that you're drinking is also aged for about a year in used cognac casks.
Interesting.
And so that softens the botanicals, softens the spices, and also gives it just a little bit of that oak and like stone fruit blossom flavor you get from cognac, I want to say almost.
Yeah, I love how clean, just the viscosity of it's amazing. It's like, it's so good. It's like by far my favorite Aquavit I've ever had. It's hands down the best.
Well, this still kind of screams caraway at you.
Yeah,
it's still right. It's still there. It's not hiding.
The nose, it's a little bit more botanical than just the caraway, but the palate is heading in that direction where you just have little peaks and valleys of other things poking their head in. But caraway is absolutely the star of the show.
Absolutely. I guess Andy wants us to say something, so we're going to smack the sword shield again here.
I got it.
You got it? Okay.
Do a blackened type sounding technique, but play. I'm not even going to pronounce this.
Garrison Keillor from Lake Wobegon. I would love to see what kind of vibrations Garrison Keillor's voice created. We actually do vibrate our barrels, but we do it with Trampled by Turtles, which is a favorite bluegrass band around here.
And that just happens to be playing because that's what you want to be listening to?
Well, it's playing after hours, so it's over in our barrel room. We don't hear it. This is at like 2 a.m.
Oh, wow.
Overnight. Our barrels are rocking out to bluegrass.
Wow. So you're actually doing, I just figured you meant like you're just playing music all the time there.
No. We actually do have loudspeakers and we vibrate our barrels overnight.
All right.
It's already done.
So they're already doing it, just not to that music.
Not to Garrison Keillor, but I like that idea. I like that idea. We're gonna
maybe we can put it on the playlist.
The news
there you go. Andy, like an addition of that.
Really pensive.
You need to step away. Okay. He just needs to talk for
Kid stuff. That's how I'm surprised my kids aren't like here sitting on my lap. They seem to have stayed in bed.
It's always a plus, right?
Yeah, but yeah, so Aquavit traditionally is taken as a shot or sipped with a meal, but it's often also like taken as a shot and then chased with beer. Yeah, so that's the Norwegian style, but it's also really great for like cocktails. And again, I love cocktails. I love creative cocktails, and Aquavit is like our most frequent go-to at our bar, at our distillery. We make tiki drinks with it. We do gin drinks with it. We use the Cognac barrel aged ones for like whiskey drinks, or I really like to like split the base of whiskey drinks and do half whiskey, half Aquavit to make it a little bit less, like to make them less sweet, less oaky, and kind of give the other flavors more room to show themselves. So it's a real fun spirit to play around with.
We like stuff so much. We came back another day for the try a bunch of cocktails because it was so good. We're like, we must go back for cocktails, and they were fantastic. So we did have an Aquavit and a gin-based one and a whiskey-based one. So we want to try one of each of those different types. They were all fabulous. So if anyone gets a chance to go try the cocktails too at night, they're really good, and they're all fancy and all really. Your bar is beautiful on there as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and so we make absolutely everything from scratch, from the spirits to the cordials to the vermouth to the bitters, juicing pounds and pounds of juice all the time. All sorts of weird stuff happens.
Good stuff. All right.
All right.
Do you want to talk about your vodka real quick too?
Talk about the vodka quick?
Yeah.
Yes. So we do make a vodka. We were originally not going to make a vodka because I was all like, I'm a flavor person. Vodka is defined by the TTB as a flavorless, odorless spirit. Boring. And we made it over a year without making vodka, but so many people every day were asking us to make vodka and asking us to make vodka. So we finally were like, we cave, we'll make vodka. We actually released it on April Fool's Day so that nobody was sure whether or not we were actually releasing a vodka because we're really nice like that. But so we decided to just like make an unusual vodka because you can make vodka from anything that you can get sugars out of, but you almost always get vodka that's made from one thing. Just corn, just grapes, just sugar, just wheat, just potatoes. And so we actually make our vodka from 3 different grains. We make it from Minnesota corn, Minnesota malted barley, and Minnesota wheat. And so each of those gives it a different kind of piece to the flavor. So it has some neutrality from corn, makes it really smooth, gives a little bit of sweetness. The wheat adds sweetness, and then the malted barley adds some maltiness and a lot of structure. So it's a much more robust, like chewy, and full flavored vodka than you would normally get. Like you can tell it's there in a cocktail instead of it just
fabulous vodka. It's a whiskey drinker's vodka is the way it's related to. It's really, really good vodka. I would drink neat on its own and just be happy drinking. It's that good. And there's not many vodkas that would say that. Their vodka's fantastic.
It's actually worthy of a vodka martini.
Yes,
it is, right? Like it's worthy of a vodka martini. There's a reason for putting it into things. It doesn't just like disappear as chemical source of booze. So I'm sorry if anyone out there loves vodka. I'm not trying to be mean.
No, I've met a couple of different distillers that absolutely did not had no desire to make vodka, but when they did, they made a whiskey drinker's vodka. They made something that actually had some great flavor to it, and it wasn't just trying to make it completely tasteless, which is, I think, what a lot of the big players in the industry go for. So,
right. And like and many people want that, and there's a place for that. Yeah. And so if that's what you want, like that is what you should have. But a lot of those exist. And so we're like, why recreate something that exists so readily?
Yeah.
Let's do something different.
Yeah. So are you using around the same mash bill that you would for your bourbon, or are you using just a completely different thing for the vodka that you've made up specifically for the vodka?
It is around what we would do for a bourbon. Our bourbon that we have aging has some more like toasted malted barleys in it too, some toasted malts, like chocolate malts, not just the lighter malts, which the vodka doesn't. But otherwise it is similar. It's like, now I'm not even going to remember the mash bill, but it's like 65-70% corn and the rest split between the other two.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
All right. Do you want to go on to your other spirits? You want to go on to your whiskeys, and then we'll go back to your amaro and your herbal liqueur and the other fun stuff.
Yeah, so we make a couple of different whiskeys. We have kind of 2 flagship whiskeys that we release every year.
It's worded the rye. It's a rye. That's the other one we'll do in a minute. That's the blend. We'll do that one. We'll do that one.
That's the blend. That's the fun blending project. So we release a rye every spring, and then we release one called Sugarbush every fall.
Oh, weasel.
You got to explain what Sugarbush is, because I had never heard of it until I got to your distillery.
Yeah, so a Sugarbush is where you boil maple sap into maple syrup. So when you tap your maple trees, and the maple trees are running in the spring, you collect the sap out of them, right? You just put a little hole into them and you can collect sap into a bucket. And then you take all these buckets of sap and you put them in big pots and you boil off the water to concentrate the sap. And it's something crazy. It's like 25-1 or something that you boil off water to leave the sap behind.
Wow.
So you're boiling off a ton of water. And that process is called sugaring the maples.
Yeah,
and so the maple tree is the sugar bush, and the place where you're doing it is the sugar shack. And so our sugar bush whiskey is a whiskey in that it is not a bourbon, it's not a rye, it is its own type of thing. And so it has kind of a bourbon mash where it's a little over 50% corn, and then it has rye and barley, but it is finished in used casks rather than new casks.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's we age it first in used port casks, actually, to give it some oakiness, but also some of that like cherry flavor from the port. And then we transfer it for the second half of its aging into bourbon barrels that have been used previously for storing maple syrup, hence the sugar bush.
Wow.
So,
Awesome.
and because we're like storing it in maple syrup barrels, it gets a little bit of maple flavor without getting sweet from it. And so that's aged around, but it's usually between 2 or 3 years, depending on the batch. So that comes out every fall. That one definitely has a cult following because it's a little bit more on that like sweeter bourbon-y style of whiskey. And then this one, the Temperance River Rye, is a Minnesota straight rye. And this one is like 70% rye grown by our friends on the organic farm.
Okay.
And
what
then
kind of rye is it? Do you remember what kind of varietal it is?
Oh, I need to ask Jonathan. Some type of northern rye. I don't actually remember. I should know this. It's funny because they grow rye, but they also grow rye as a cover crop as part of their rotation, right? And so we can actually use the cover rye, cover crop rye, if they harvest it and dry it. And so we use that.
So 2 different types of rye you can get there then.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. And then what's the rest of it for the 70%?
It is wheat and malted. No, it's corn and malted barley.
Okay.
Sorry. It's corn and malted barley. So a pretty typical rye structure, but it's that hardy Minnesota rye. And then we age it in new oak barrels from Black Swan Cooperage, which is a cooperage just a couple hours west of us.
Okay. So it's Minnesota everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't smell like any really typical ryes I've ever had prior. It smells really good. It smells like a sweeter rye, but it's also like more unique. Even like the oak from the Minnesota oak. I know we've discovered in drinking a bunch that Minnesota oak has a very different flavor profile to it that we really like. It's just super interesting that you can definitely tell is in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. It has nice vanilla and caramel types of notes, but they're not like it's almost a little bit more like a French oak or something where it's a little tighter structure.
I agree with that. Yeah, it's not a punch you in the face rye like a lot, especially at 7. Usually a lot of ryes at that point are going to punch you in the face, a little peppery and spicy and a lot of dill. This is none of those notes.
Yes, right. I feel like rye can be very peppery, very lichen-y, almost like a lichen that would grow on a tree, or like tastes like floor varnish. We try to mellow all of those attributes.
So how do you do that?
So it's a combination of making pretty tight cuts.
Okay.
So it's a fairly clean distillate, maybe a little bit more so than some places would. We age it for around between 3 and 4 years.
Okay.
And it's that new oak, which I think gives a good flavor, but it also is a lot in the vatting. And so vatting is the process of choosing which barrels you're going to mix together to make a release. And of course, the big whiskey houses have just thousands and thousands and thousands of barrels that they can pull from to vat things together to get consistent flavored, whatever you want, maker's mark. Smaller distilleries don't have that luxury, right? For a release, we're maybe pulling 8 barrels or 12 barrels and vatting them together. But I try very hard for every release to pull barrels with very different characteristics from each other instead of very similar to balance each other out so that it's not one like just pepper or just forest floor or whatever. And it makes kind of like a more balanced whiskey.
Yeah, it's a super unique rye. I think it's a good rye to get people into rye. They're like, oh, I hate rye. Like, you won't hate this one. You'll like this rye. It's a really nice and unique. Like, it's a way sweeter rye, I think, for people too. So, it's just, what do you think of this, Will? This is like a very unique rye. Will, you're on mute.
I was muted. Sorry. I'm just now getting to the nose. I apologize.
It's all good. Hey, Freedom.
But this reminds me more of like a still Austin rye than it does a typical Kentucky rye, where you get those like the chocolate notes, like the dark chocolate.
Yeah, it's got a nice nuts
there as well.
Like pound cake to it.
Yeah.
Spearmint. Oh, it smells delicious. Yeah, it doesn't have any of the dill notes that Kentucky ryes typically carry with them.
Now, and plus it's got that Minnesota oak, which makes it, as we found from other drinking, makes a huge difference too.
Yeah.
Is it Quercus?
Nose is lovely.
Elba or Quercus? I don't remember which one it is.
Makes delicious whiskey is all we know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, not really nice. Yeah, it's super unique. I just think it's really. Oh yeah, the temperance. I guess probably aren't from there. Can you explain what the temperance is as well? The Temperance River.
Yep, Temperance River is the name of a river just north of us.
Okay.
And we thought it was hilarious that it's called Temperance.
I was like, it's the best name ever for a rye. I was like, it's so great. Like, do you have any idea why it was called the Temperance River?
There are a number of different stories about why it would be called the Temperance River, so we're not exactly sure. One of the ideas is to do with the color, and like the color is very brown or something, and so there was some like joke about how it was brown because like all the whiskey had been tossed into it or something by the temperance movement.
That's fun.
There's also like maybe it had to do with there was a lot of like bootlegging during Prohibition, and maybe it had something to do with people traveling from Canada, running things down. So we're not sure, but it's a gorgeous river, amazing camping, some huge waterfalls that are really cool.
Yeah, we did go out and see the waterfalls. They're really beautiful there. But yeah, that's a great. Either way, it's a great story why it's called that. But it makes it even better that that's the name of the whiskey.
Yeah,
the flavor is lovely, and it feels like you have at least a little bit of age on there. Am I feeling like 4 years, 5 years on this?
Yeah, it's 4 years.
Okay, you taste every bit of it. It's nice. It's not doesn't have any of the young notes. It doesn't.
No, I really like it. I love the uniqueness of it.
The barrel choices were lovely.
Yeah, and we usually use a number 3 char for those who are interested. So it's not like super charred, but it's charred enough to get some of that filtration, like that charcoal filtration that the char gets, with also a good amount of like toast level in there.
Mike's here, says thanks for the chat. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
I like the resonance of your
yeah. Being a Whiskey Crusaders, you got to keep a sword and shield. Only seem fair.
It does.
We'll upgrade it to metal at some point.
Yeah. So, Andy, how do you guys do surviving COVID? how'd you guys survive COVID? What Andy's asking about that.
Oh, yeah. So we were one of the early distilleries in the country, actually, that started making hand sanitizer. Instead of just spirits. We were like, man, I got all this ethanol around. So we got denatured, and we distributed hand sanitizer to the community, and we actually gave away hand sanitizer for free to anybody who needed it. But like the local hospitals and fire department and like places also needed hand sanitizer. And so we just charged them a super low rate for bulk hand sanitizer, which was a decent source of income. Then we also, we pared down our staff, but actually because we had really good statewide distribution in Minnesota and Wisconsin in liquor stores, still had pretty good sales through COVID. And then we actually, after a while, we started doing cocktail kits. So we would have like bottles and then mixers and things like that to go that people could pick up. But we also set up like a little parklet outside of the distillery, 6 months in or whenever it was, where they were like, transmission is far reduced outside. And so outside things are allowed. Awesome. So we set up an outside bar, and we ran it even through the winter. We built fires out there. And we call it the Winter Wunderbar. Winter Wunderbar. And we served cocktails around fires all winter long. And there was one day in February where it was minus 20 out, and there was like a 2-hour wait to get into the Wunderbar.
That's amazing.
We're just like, I need to do something with my time. And so we had like spiked hot chocolates and toddies and
very cool.
And really, really big puffy suits.
Andy would also like to know about your barrels. Do you know about how long your yard aging? This doesn't taste like it's the kiln dried barrels. It tastes like you got some nice barrels here.
Yep. So we use our new barrels are from Black Swan. So they are dry aged and coopered and toasted and all of that stuff in their process. We also use a lot of used barrels. I love used barrels for the complexity and for getting the aging without the super intense oak flavor, and also bringing in other flavors. So we get cognac barrels, we get used bourbon barrels, we get port barrels, we get all sorts of barrels, and we get those through a barrel broker called Duluth Barrel Works, and they import them from various countries, France, Portugal, Kentucky. It's a different country, basically. And then we have a rick house that is indoors, so it's semi-climate controlled. Like, it's not really very climate controlled, but it's not outside, because if you tried to age anything with like availability to the elements in northern Minnesota, you would only get like 3 months of aging per year.
Yeah, that would not be good.
And it would be frozen the rest of the time, and your barrels would die really fast.
It'd be super awesome. Like, that did not work out well at all.
I think, did somebody ask where the distillery is?
Yes.
Yeah, we answered them.
It's in Duluth there.
Duluth, Minnesota.
Find the bridge, you'll find the distillery. It's literally right in front of it.
But yeah, Duluth, Minnesota, not Duluth, Georgia.
Oh, that's true. I forgot
Very
about
different.
that.
Gin did not originate in the Scandinavian nations. It originated in the Netherlands. So the Netherlands is the birthplace of Genever, which is kind of the first recorded mainly juniper infused spirit. And like I was saying, Genever is maltier. So that was mainly due to the distilling techniques they had available when Genever was created. And so it was used mainly for curing stomach ailments, they thought, and like gout or something. And so they would distill just juniper berries, I think, into kind of like a malted barley base. And then because of the historic, all of the like treaties and intermarriage between the Dutch royal family and the British royal family, there was a lot of commingling between those kingdoms. And so then Genever became popular in England while the distilling techniques became better. And so they started distilling the base more cleanly and still infusing it with juniper berries. And that was when the London dry style of gin was born.
Well, very cool. That's awesome. All right. Do you want to go on to the honor brand? I guess.
Oh, yeah, sure. So let's have a little bit of hay and sunshine. So this, like we were talking about with choosing barrels to vat and how like the same run of whiskey can, in barrels aged next to each other, can taste really different from each other. And so my personal preference is to use different barrels to even out each other's qualities, kind of like a master wine blender would. I was thinking about like how all the great wines of the world, like many of the great wines are blends. And maybe you could do more with blended whiskey with that same idea where it's like, you know, you blend a Malbec with a Cabernet Sauvignon so that you don't get too much of either. You get something smoother. And so I thought, let's do that with whiskey and see if we can have it all. And so this is actually a blend of bourbon, rye, and Scotch. And you can taste each of those in there, and it like gives you a little bit of everything. And so it's got some of that pepper, it's got some of that vanilla, and it's got some like a tiny bit of like smoke and structure. I am the blender, yeah. And so it's just as like a fun project, and we liked it so much for cocktails that we kept making it. And now we're on our 11th batch of craft blended whiskey.
Fantastic.
And so every time, right, I work with different whiskey like brokers to sample a bunch of different barrels and then choose different barrels of bourbon, rye, and Scotch each time to blend together to make kind of a whiskey with the structure that I want.
It's fabulous. Hey, Marshall, good to see you. Check out Marshall Channel Rough Spirits, who was here last week for National Rum Day. Well, that's valid too. All your other problems will be solved too, Andy. If you stand outside in Minnesota for a few hours.
Won't have any feet. But,
yeah.
You know, the gout will also be gone.
Exactly.
You also won't be breathing, but it's fine.
So I'm sorry, what did you say this was a combination of?
So it's a combination of bourbon and rye and Scotch.
Okay. And
delicious.
Wow.
And it just is like, I like to say you can have it all. Like, why not have a little bit of everything you love all at once? And what's funny is like, yeah, they all they play well together. They each are there present, but they each kind of like bring their own qualities to the party and create a single whiskey that just like makes a really good cocktail whiskey. It's like really good for Manhattan, really good for a whiskey sour, really good for an old fashioned, where it just is like letting like just like a really balanced characteristic of the whiskey work well with the other cocktails ingredients.
So is each batch just like super different or all fairly similar?
They are, I would say, if like the spectrum of how much a whiskey can vary is this big, they're varying like this big.
Okay. So a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to have a lineup and go, how do these all taste?
Yeah, but they do taste different, but I try to keep them kind of consistent in how they behave. And it is a little bit similar to like what High West or like Compass Box or some of the places that
it's kind of what I figured.
Blending have done.
Patty wants to know if
This is
all
way
over
better than
America or go to Europe at all, like for distribution.
We are not in Europe at all right now for distribution. We have not found, I mean, you have to work through all of the like export and find importers for whichever country you want to be in. And we just have not. My uncle in Norway for a little while was going to like try to become a importer in Norway. Yeah. But that is one state controlled system there. And he was like, I don't think I'm going to do it.
What states are you in here in the U.S.?
In the U.S., we are in Minnesota.
Canada.
We haven't made it to Canada.
Okay.
But you can drive down from Canada.
That's true.
We are in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Nebraska, Michigan. Our canned cocktails are in Ohio. And then you can get our Spruce Gin in Total Wines in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
Is that all of them? That's what I remember.
It's okay. They can find the more information on the website. You're here for entertainment.
It's a very nice website.
And then your friends can
wonderful website that has all of the information detailed that actually Donald has already dropped for us.
Perfect.
Twice now. Thank you again, Donald, for making sure that always happens for us, man. You rock. So everybody, they can check it out and find out where they can buy it. They can find out all about more information and more in depth as to what you're doing. But
yeah, Freedom Malts would like to know who distributes for you in Wisconsin. I know he's over there.
Johnson Brothers, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So it's Johnson Brothers, unless you're in Madison, and then it's called Phillips of Madison.
Okay, cool. There you go, Freedom Malts, so you can pick up some bottles. So, or if you don't live in those states and you have friends that like to hand deliver them to you,
exactly,
get them to you, be in great shape.
You can get
after this, there might be some hand delivery going on with other things that we'll definitely need after this to make some amazing cocktails.
Yeah. There is also a store called Ace's Spirits that can ship to a lot of states that carries it.
Check that out, guys. That might be a really good solution for you to go to Ace Spirits there.
Out of Florida, probably?
I'm not sure. I don't remember where they're
I think they're actually in Minnesota is Ace. I think that's where they're based out of. And I think, they do. I know Steve Ace talked to us a lot about those, and he's gotten stuff shipped out of there to people. So let's check it out. Oh, he'll head up to Duluth. Even better. So go, everyone else go check out their distillery. You'll get
come take a tour, have a cocktail, do a tasting. And so then in addition to these base spirits, like you were saying, we make an amaro, we make an herbal liqueur, we make an aperitif, and we make some canned cocktails. Crazy times.
Can you explain those other ones for people that might not know? Because I know, but they're just fun to me. So I like to just have explained to the people what those cool things are.
Yes, right. Because it's
an amaro.
Yeah, well, what's an amaro? They have no idea.
It's not whiskey, but these are more botanical spirits. Because again, just herbs and spices light me up. And through years of doing different infusions and tinctures and things like that for our cocktails in our cocktail room, we developed a number of different liqueurs that we just particularly loved and decided that we wanted to release onto the market. So amaro, to begin with, is a whole category of bittersweet liqueurs that are traditionally considered after dinner drinks. A lot of them, most of them come from Italy. A lot of them also come from France, but a growing number of distilleries in the United States are making amari. And really the main feature is just that it is both bitter and sweet. And then it can be a little bit confusing because there are amari that are more citrusy. There are ones that are more like spicy or rooty and medicinal. And there are ones that are very minty and eucalyptusy.
So like with gin, it is a wide...
There's a wide variety.
Of amaros.
There's just an infinite number that you can taste, and you can sip them straight, and then you can play with them in different cocktails. They're not necessarily interchangeable, but our amaro is definitely in the like bitter citrus and root category. So it has several different types of bitter citrus. It has Chinota oranges, it has bitter oranges, it has navel oranges, it has grapefruit, but it also has like dandelion root and angelica root and burdock and gentian and like a number of different bittering agents, as well as like sarsaparilla and cinnamon. And I think there's like 26 different herbs and spices in there that we steep. And so a lot of these liqueurs are direct steeped, and then you might distill off of that or just filter it. So you steep it for however long your proprietary recipe calls for, and sweeten it with sugar or with honey. When you
steep, does that mean you like literally stick it like in a barrel or into a vat? How does the steeping itself?
The steeping is you put botanicals almost in like big tea bags. So kind of like steeping a tea. You have your herbs and spices in these big cloth tea bags, and you just stick them in the alcohol and let them sit.
So, like, is it like in a container, like a big plastic tote or something?
It's in a big stainless steel tank.
Stainless steel tank. Okay, you're doing that. Okay, very cool.
Yeah. So lots of stainless steel tanks sitting around brewing things.
Okay.
So our amaro is kind of bittersweet citrus and root liqueur. You could use it kind of like a Campari or like a Cynar. So really good if like a Campari is too like fruity bitter for you in a Negroni. Like our amaro makes a much softer, more like spiced Negroni. That's really, really good. Then we make an herbal liqueur, kind of think of like a Benedictine or a chartreuse. And there's this like grand tradition across Europe of monks in particular going out into the fields and like picking every single herb that is not going to kill you and putting it into booze and letting it sit and turning it into an herbal liqueur. And so we kind of did the same thing and took all these different herbs, everything from chamomile to bay leaf to thyme, and we steep that into this beautiful garden herb liqueur. And then we sweeten it with local raw honey. And it is like beautiful in a toddy. You can use it instead of chartreuse and something like a last word. So it's in that same family as chartreuse, but it's like its own unique special thing as well. And then we also make an aperitif. So like with Amari, aperitifs are bittersweet, but they are lighter and they're supposed to be before dinner instead of after dinner. So they're usually like lighter in color. Amari are usually like brown, and aperitifs are usually like clear or pink or red or orange. And so they tend to be citrusy. Sometimes they're infused wines, like a vermouth even could be considered an aperitif. Aperol, Lillet, things like that, where you have gentian or quinine as the bittering agent, and then a lot of different citrus and things like that. And so ours has several different types of orange again, and coriander and gentian and hibiscus. And so, yeah, you can use it. It's like really good in a spritz.
And you said that you're making a chartreuse as well?
We're making herbal liqueur that you can use in a similar way to chartreuse.
I might need to get my hands on that because I can't find chartreuse. And
it's true. The monks decided to stop.
Yeah.
They're jerks. I need chartreuse in my life, and it's not around anymore.
Well, you have to order some of our herbal liqueur and see what you think. It is different,
like
but it's really delicious.
It's really good.
And Andy's telling me that the Ace ships to Oklahoma for only $20, which isn't bad. I'd tip my buddy about that, if not more. So
yeah, that's perfect.
You know, that's a pretty that's not a bad
solution to get you guys all over the states at least. You guys, I don't know if they ship internationally from Ace or not, but at least they can hand you guys to the states, so that's good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you, I tried everything that she's had. They're all amazing. So it's not just her, but it's really really good stuff. Like I said, this is the best craft stores I've been to. Like everything's fabulous, and there's can't say enough good things about it. So I'll be giving a bunch of these over to Liquor Hound, which is a huge channel on the OGs of YouTube to have him take a look at these as well. And he's also loves all spirits, so I'm excited to see his take on these as well.
Yeah. Well, and I wish you nothing but good luck. This is really great whiskey. This is really great spirits. I think you're making wonderful things. I love the story. I love the fact that you're using that wonderful water source that really, really, it absolutely
the spirit
helps.
of the North.
It helps. That's for sure. Yeah. Do you have anything that we missed? Is there anything that you want to add before we call it an evening?
No, not anything major. I mean, there's all the normal sales pitchy talking.
Yeah, go ahead and do it.
It's organic and women run and zero waste. So we actually, we do a lot of compost and various reuse programs. And so our whole distillery actually makes less, landfill waste is the word. Landfill waste per day than the average American family.
Wow, that's impressive. Some happy animals, I'm sure, with all that.
We do have plans for bourbon. We have bourbon that's aging, but it hasn't been released yet.
Oh, yeah. And then I know Donner passed us earlier about single malt, if you had that as well.
We have released small batches of single malt in the past, and we will again, but we don't actually have any in barrels right now.
Okay. So it's coming. It's possible.
So it will come, but I can't remember why it fell off for a while. I think COVID and expensive barley and all that stuff.
Yeah, it'll do it. So
yeah, and small distilleries, you have to cash flow.
Right, yeah, that's slightly important.
So as a newer distiller, come from the biz, what is your favorite grain to work with? What is your least favorite grain to work with?
Ooh. Well, corn has the highest yields, but it somehow the dumb accidents where you're like, how did I forget to close that valve? Now there's corn exploding everywhere. Only happen with corn. Corn explosions only happen with corn. So it's easy to work with, but it's also a trouble child. So I think malted barley is our favorite to work with. And rye is definitely the hardest. It's the most finicky.
Okay.
That's what we hear a lot.
Yeah, it likes to
Those
get
rye
stuck.
balls and-
It doesn't like to have a high yield. It's grumpy grain.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hey, Sharper. I know Sharper's up there in Minnesota as well, so go check them out. If you're up there to the distillery, go check them out as well.
And he's very interested in a Garrison.
Apparently, you have to have music playing. He'd like
I
a
don't even know where
volunteer.
Garrison Keeler is these days. He went dark.
I mean,
We'll
you
have
can
to
just
do
take
some research.
one barrel and just put like a little speaker that just
There you go,
blasts
just
out one
Randy.
barrel.
Right, and it's just the like single barrel.
And that
release.
can just be Andy's
It's a single
sound
barrel.
We'll get all the details worked out, but that'll just
Perfect,
be Andy's
perfect.
single barrel.
Hysterical.
All
And I think we can make this happen.
right.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you very
Thanks.
much for telling us all about your distillery and sharing some wonderful whiskeys and wonderful spirits with us. This is lovely stuff.
Thanks for
What's your-
inviting me. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for
What's
coming
your
to visit.
favorite cocktail to make with this stuff? And then we'll.
Ooh, well, it's going to be a different cocktail for each spirit.
Mm.
Right? So
well,
juniper, probably a gimlet or
Okay.
a martini, like a 50-50 martini. Spruce, I'm a martini person, so spruce, probably martini, or a bee's knees. Cedar, Negroni, no contest. Our unaged Aquavit makes a really good gimlet too, actually.
Okay.
Or it's like both that one and our aged Aquavit are really good instead of rum and a jungle bird.
Interesting.
It's surprising and it is wonderful.
All right.
But a Manhattan with our aged Aquavit is also one of my favorite things. Temperance River Rye, I like to make a Manhattan or like a kind of black Manhattan where I split the vermouth with some amaro. So it's not a black Manhattan with just amaro. It's like vermouth and amaro. Sugarbush, I drink straight. The Hand Sunshine, I really like a Manhattan or a whiskey sour. I
Okay.
can decide which one I like better. Yeah. Herbal liqueur, I like to make last word, of course.
Mhm.
Amaro, I use most in a Negroni, I would say. And the apertivo, I like to spritz, but it's also really good in a paper plane instead of Aperol.
Okay. Fun. Sounds like a
And-
fun.
Did you
fun-
memorize all that?
I think so.
The good news is
Got it?
it's all on here, so I'll just come back
Got
and
it?
watch the video.
There you go.
Oh,
We have it on film. We don't have to memorize. That's part of the reason why we started this channel to begin with. I do not have to control my memory. I have it on film.
it's the
We'll live on the internet for all eternity.
best. Exactly.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you again for joining. Everybody, thank you again for watching. We really appreciate you. I hope you get yourself some wonderful whiskeys in your life, some wonderful spirits in your life. And thanks for joining us again.
Cheers to that.
Cheers,
Cheers.
everybody. See you guys next week. All right, bye.
Bye.